Hi, my name is Fritzi Horstman, and welcome to Compassion in Action. Today, my guest is Emily Evans. Emily is a therapist who has spent her career helping adults, adolescents, and children heal from the effects of developmental, systemic, and institutional trauma. She specializes in the treatment of PTSD, substance addiction, attachment disorders, ADHD, mood disorders, and anxiety. Her focus is on healing the mind-body connection through the practical application of neuroscience and collective restoration. She is active on community action teams throughout Delaware for reducing incarceration, recidivism, and racial disparities in the legal system. Emily Evans, welcome to Compassion in Action. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your background, what you do, and what your passions are?
Sure. So I am a licensed professional counselor. I'm a clinician in private practice. I do counseling every day for individuals, families, groups. I treat adults, adolescents, and children, and I focus on healing trauma. Uh, so that's kind of my specialty, and that's what I do.
So I really want to grind down on what is trauma. And
Mm.
as you know, I work on adverse childhood experiences. That's kind of my little focus with the incarcerated population and the correctional population.
Right.
And I wanted to, maybe you can just give us a little primer on what trauma does to the brain, body, and spirit, if you don't mind.
I love how you say that too, brain, body, and spirit, because it does affect all three. And so often I think in our culture, we only like to look at one at a time. And it's so important to look at the whole person and how these adverse experiences, trauma, right, affect each person. And so trauma, it runs the gamut, right? It depends very much on the individual person. It depends on the types of support, right, that are in place or may not be in place when this traumatic experience takes place. But basically, a very general definition of trauma is something that is overwhelming to the person, something that happens to the person that is overwhelming, outside of their control, right? And so because of those two things, their body, brain, and spirit react in a protective way.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And this protective way, if it was an animal in the wild, it would shake it off, right? If
Right.
if it was attacked, like I see ducks in the water, they have a fight, and then suddenly they're separated, and then they're shaking it off.
Exactly.
But we don't shake it off.
No, we don't. We need to be taught, right? There are so many times I will be teaching a client, right, or a person different skills, right? How to discharge this energy, right, that's been stuck in their brain, body, spirit, probably all three because of this traumatic experience. And they'll say things to me like, why was I never taught how to do this? Right? And it's just our culture is traumatized, right? No matter what culture we come from. Um, and some cultures, I think, are inherently more accepting of the practices that can be healing, while others, right, just want to live between our ears up here, right? And you can't think your way out of trauma.
No. So, okay. So can we give our listeners and our audience an example? Let's give an example of, I would like to use an adverse childhood experience. Let's
Yeah.
say emotional abuse.
Okay.
And then see and how through time this evolves and changes our behavior and changes the way we respond to the world. or actually react to the world. We're not responding, we're reacting, right?
Yes. Love that distinction. Job, Fritzi. Okay, so emotional abuse. Okay. And again, we're talking about adverse childhood experiences, right? A lot of what we would call developmental trauma takes place in those formative years of childhood, right? And we know that there are sensitive periods in our development where trauma is likely to have an even greater effect, right? So if a child is living in an environment where there's a lot of emotional abuse, right? And we could define that any number of ways. It could be things like just invalidation, right? The child has an emotion, let's say it's sadness, so the child cries, okay? And perhaps because this child's growing up in an environment where there's a lot of poverty, a lot of violence, community violence, right? This child's parents are going to teach that child, no, you don't cry. Pull yourself up. Put those tears away. You need to be tough, right? So again, it's in love. It's kind of like you need to be tough to survive, but the sadness isn't validated. So the child learns to turn off the sadness and the tears, but here's the thing, we can't just turn off one emotion. It's all of them, right? So with the sadness, we turn off anger, we turn off joy, we turn off jealousy, we turn off all of the feelings, right? And so there's a split, right, within the self, right? We start to have these fractures in our identity, right? And so certain parts of us are not allowed to exist, right? And that affects the spirit, right? That affects the spirit. And then our bodies, right? Our bodies are affected. You know, in this example, the child may not be able to cry, right? I have lots of adult clients who would say, if I could just cry, that'd be great. You know, and they have to learn to cry again.
What you're talking about is numbing, right? And some people call
Yep.
it disassociation, right? We disassociate from our feelings, we're numb. And that sounds very similar to addiction, alcoholism.
Yes. Yes.
And so this numbing seems to be prevalent in our society in different ways, like our addiction. Like I'm a workaholic, so I'll numb so I don't have to feel, you know, the sadness that I have for my father dying.
Right.
Or I'll watch my father, who was an alcoholic. He was so sad that he just drank, and he was so abused, he just drank. So we're dealing with a numb society right now. I mean, Netflix, of course it's doing so well because people don't want to face what's going on. So what happens when we push everything down like you're describing? What happens to our spirit?
So one of my favorite quotes that I learned from a mindfulness teacher is that, you know, a lot of us end up living a few feet outside of our bodies, right? So we just walk around all the time, these disembodied souls, right? Because at some point, because of one or more traumas, right, we weren't allowed to express or get in touch with our true selves, okay? So, and there's a lot of shame attached to that, right? There's another emotion we could talk about probably for hours. So because our emotions, right, either we weren't taught how to name them, we weren't taught what they mean, you know, and that's a very core part of your being is your emotional expression. So we're taught to deny that, right? And then a lot of times our traumas are body-based, right? They affect, you know, sexual trauma, physical abuse, violence, poverty. These are all things that affect our physical bodies. So we also learn to divorce ourselves and our spirits from the pain that we experience in our physical bodies. right? So it's like we walk around with, okay, here's my body, my spirit's over there, and my emotions are back there somewhere, I don't know. And so we have a hard time integrating all of these pieces of ourselves. And then we come in contact with other humans who are suffering from the same disintegration. And we have what we're seeing all over the place right now.
So Gabor Mate talks
Mhm.
about the split that we have to go through, what is kind of like what you're talking about, survival versus authenticity or attachment. He calls
Yes.
it attachment.
Attachment, yes.
So we give up who we are, our feelings, our soul, our magnificence,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can survive.
Yeah.
And this is the choice that we believe we have to make. And right, so there's
Yeah.
and we do many times have to make this choice so that our parents will take care of us. We'll do whatever they
Yes.
say.
Yes.
And so I think this has to do with generational abuse, and
Mm-hmm.
we've all forgotten who we are,
Oh, absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Yes. And trauma, I have to credit Resma Menakem for this one. He was the one that said it, but I believe he quoted that there are scientific studies now that are showing us that trauma can be passed down up to 14 generations. And I love studying epigenetics, right? Which shows that basically what happens in our environment, what happens outside of us, gets inside and can turn on and off the expression of certain genes. I mean, that's amazing. That's amazing.
That's so it's mind-boggling. But when we talk about our country, the United States, and the slavery, that's
Yes.
14, 15, 16 generations. But that trauma,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not just the slaves, right?
Right.
It's the slave owners, and
Yes.
it's the people that are condoning it, even though they don't even have direct relationship with the slavery. So we're
Exactly.
all traumatized.
All of us.
Slavery has traumatized the United States, right?
Yes, it has. Absolutely. No question about it. And we're
And
seeing it play. We are reenacting the trauma, right? Trauma that does not get healed and integrated, and human beings who don't become integrated end up reenacting the trauma, right? And this is part of the work that I do with, my clients that I'm working on, finding ways to heal, right? It's like we got to look at first, right? What kinds of traumas happened to you, right? And then we have to look at, okay, how did it affect you? And how do you keep reenacting this, right? And I love how you said, earlier, this is adaptive, right? Because there's always so much shame and stigma around, the types of behaviors and ways of thinking that we've adopted in order to survive, right? So
right,
it's
right.
something I say, and I've heard this a million times in recovery circles, right? People in the room say this all the time. It works until it doesn't.
Right.
So the adaptive things worked at one time, right? The adaptive behaviors worked to help you survive the trauma, okay? And now it's not working anymore, okay? So if we can look back and say, that doesn't make me a bad person. That doesn't make me crazy, right? It was adaptive. It was very smart for me to do that. And now now I'm at a place where I don't need that behavior anymore to survive. And we have to unlearn it. And unlearning is always harder than learning something new.
Wow. Yeah, so I was traumatized. I have 7 aces and out of 10. And so I'm 57. I learned I was traumatized when I was 55, that was like the blinking light, like, oh, that's just
Ah,
that. Yes, but this awareness is what's so important, that's just the
Yes.
first step for all of us in
Yeah.
society. But I love what you say. There is the shame that we carry, but it's the shame that we feel like we've done something bad, but
Right.
that's also passed down through generations, right?
Absolutely.
The sh-
Absolutely.
yes, the shame of harming slaves or our
Yes.
African American, we have
Yes.
shame from that. The shame from being harmed and being
Mhm.
dehumanized, because they say you can't dehumanize someone without dehumanizing yourself. So
Absolutely.
we're in a culture of inherited dehumanization, right?
Yes. Yes, inherited dehumanization, right? We have witnessed, right? We've been witness to so much dehumanization of one another. And we're reenacting it.
We're reenacting it out on, in Washington. We're reenacting it in Congress. We're reenacting
Yes.
it. Black Lives Matter. We're reenacting it with Antifa or whatever that is.
Right. Yes. It's all reenactment. Yes. And in the legal system, right? There's so much and if we look at the history, right, of the legal system and what brought it into place, right? And how prisons came to be. There's so much trauma and dehumanization, and that's the foundation it was built on.
And it's a foundation of domination, right? Like
Yes.
the idea that in order for me to be good, I have to take someone out. Like,
Right.
and that's, that's cultural. It's within gangs, it's within
Yes.
police departments, it's within prisons,
Mm-hmm.
it's within corporations,
Oh yeah.
and the way we're treating our earth, and the
Mhm.
way we're treating poor people, all these
Yes.
systems of domination, right? Like,
Mhm.
and
Abuses of power.
abuses
Abuses.
of power and good versus evil, and using that duality,
Mm.
the power of law, right? The power of law, you are bad, therefore you have to be punished, instead of you did something wrong and we got to find out what happened to you, right?
Exactly.
That's a shift. That's a shift in how we perceive what we're doing,
Yes.
right?
Yes, and that's such a difficult shift. Okay, so going back to what trauma does to the brain. Um, okay, let me think how I want to say this and bring this all together. I love that you brought this up. This is perfect. So the duality,
Yeah.
the black and white thinking, the either or. Okay. If you think about a person who's in survival mode, that's what it is. It's dualistic thinking, right? It's either good or bad, it's right or wrong, right? And I have to make sure that I protect myself, okay?
And it's me or them, right?
Yes,
It's
I'm going
me
to
or
get them before they get me, okay?
right.
So this is the survivalist mindset that repeated traumatization manifests, right? So what we have is a bunch of people that are operating on what I call like auxiliary mode in your brain, right? It's like only the essential necessary systems are on. Right? So you're using that very primitive part of the brain, the downstairs brain, right? Your
Right.
brain stem and your limbic system. Okay? The limbic system is the amygdala, right? Which is the smoke alarm of the brain, right? That tells you when to fight, flight, or freeze, fight, flee, or freeze. So we've got a whole bunch of people just operating in their downstairs primitive brains, okay? And then in order for that shift that you just spoke about, that change in mindset to take place, we need to be able to use our whole brains, right? We need to be able to see nuance, and we need to be able to have empathy, right? You can't have empathy if you're only in your downstairs brain. Doesn't work.
And when you're in fight, flight, or freeze, this part of the brain is offline, right? We have no access to empathy or
no, it's
reason.
like it's like brakes and gas, right? When you're driving a car. So the
Hold on, we got a dog coming. So it's brakes and gas. We're gonna hold on. Let's
okay.
Let me pause. Okay,
there we go. So it's like the gas pedal and the brakes in your brain, right? So the amygdala, right, is always in defense mode, right? It's always like, yeah, hold on, like don't go towards anything because it's gonna hurt you. And you should probably be defensive and fight it, you know, or run away or just freeze and hope that it doesn't notice you, right? So that makes it impossible, right? That state of mind makes it impossible to connect and attach with other people, right? Because they're going to be throwing off all of these signs, right? That the downstairs brain interprets as dangerous, okay? So you have to be in your upstairs brain, or have your lid on, like Dan Siegel says, right? You keep that lid on. That's the only way that we can connect and safely approach and attach to one another, as if we're all in our upstairs brains.
Okay, so wait, we talk about prisons. Everyone is in their downstairs brain. So yes. they can't connect, they can't attach, they can't even
it's
form.
Not safe.
It's not safe. So,
not
and
safe.
Policemen, when they're out in neighborhoods that they perceive are dangerous, they're in their downstairs brain.
All the people, the human beings that they're encountering, right, are being received and filtered as threats that I need to defend myself against, right? So no wonder.
Right. And this part of the brain, the upstairs brain is not, the upstairs brain is not online. So we don't have access to it. A policeman does not have access to that part of the brain. And I know it's controversial to even defend it, but this goes across the line from people who commit crimes to policemen who commit crimes.
Yes.
This is what's going on. It is not a moral choice on either side. It's science. If you're in your downstairs brain, there is no morality available to you. You are acting like, I like to bring up road rage because a lot of people can understand that. You don't feel safe, right? No. You don't feel safe, and suddenly you're just yelling at the car. And
it's a life and death situation. People die in car accidents all the time.
Right.
Yeah. Right in your downstairs brain. It's like, okay, if I use the lid flip, right? I'll review this. I do this all the time. I'm sure people have heard it before, but you have a brain in your hand, right? The thumb, okay, is your amygdala. Okay, so we put it's in the middle of the brain. You actually have two, one on each side. You have a left amygdala and a right amygdala. I know.
I didn't know that.
Right. So pretend my thumb is split in two. So your amygdala, okay? This is the center of defense. This is the smoke alarm of the brain. It will go off and say danger, 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 okay? And it's just raw emotion, okay? And it is directly connected to your brain stem, which is responsible for your respiration, your heart rate, your blood pressure, all those necessary systems for life, okay? Then you have your prefrontal cortex, all right? This is your lid, your upstairs brain, okay? All this here is your downstairs brain. This is your upstairs brain, okay? So, pretend there's eyes and a nose and a mouth right here, right? Here it is. So what happens, right, is when you go into that defense mode because you're feeling threatened, you feel that your life is being threatened. And remember, this is the very definition of trauma. Something is happening to me that's threatening my life, that's overwhelming, okay, and I can't control. You flip your lid, the upstairs brain goes offline, And all you're doing is acting out of this auxiliary mode, right? This very primitive system that cannot connect with other people, that can only see other people as threats.
And that makes, I think of domestic violence.
Yes.
Because I wonder why anyone would want to hurt their wife or their kids, but the lid is flipped and they don't see them. They don't have
human.
As a human.
No.
But they have that capacity, but something triggers them. So can we talk about triggers? Because that's a big thing that I don't think I didn't even understand, that like someone cutting you off is a trigger, right?
Absolutely.
Right?
And everybody has different triggers depending on their traumas, right? That's the hard part. It's like, oh, okay, I'm just thinking like with my husband in our marriage, like he has different triggers than I do. And it's taken us 18 years to start to figure out what some of our triggers are, because we unknowingly trip each other's triggers. And so you'll see that, this person in front of you that you normally trust and feel is safe is having a complete lid flip moment and is acting insane. And it's like, what is going on with you? You triggered their trauma, right? And they flip their lid and they're back in that survival mode, right? Okay, so for triggers, it's super important to have compassion for yourself, right? To know what your own triggers are, right? And to be able to say to yourself and to others, okay, deep breath, right? Of course your body and your brain and your spirit are doing this right now, because trauma knows no time frame, right? Trauma doesn't know that it's today, September 3rd, 2020. Trauma is telling you, oh, we're exactly right back there in that moment when it first happened. There's no time stamp, right? That's the important thing about the downstairs brain and the limbic system. It has no time stamp whatsoever. And that's another definition of the nature of trauma, is that it happened in the past, but my body and my nervous system are experiencing it as if it were happening for the first time right now. Yes. And that's why you see, right, the reaction to triggers is very big and loud and scary.
Yes. Okay. We're in a prison now. And guess what?
What?
Basically everything is triggering, right?
Yes. Yes.
So, and this is something that's really important to get to the correctional officers and to the other people that are living in prison.
Yes. So much, Fritzi.
Right? Because when someone is triggered, they're not being disrespectful. They're trying to keep themselves safe.
Yes.
And they're going to be doing things that look crazy, that like you need to be contained, you need to be set down.
Oh yeah.
And so it's the only way to untrigger somebody is to make them feel safe, right?
Bingo. And guess what? if I am in my downstairs brain and my lid is flipped, I don't have a prayer of helping another person put their lid on. It starts with me. It begins with me. Okay, so if my lid is flipped and I'm trying to get someone else's lid back on, I don't have a prayer, right? It starts with me. It begins with me. I have to know how to keep my lid on, right? Or if my lid flips, because it inevitably will, because I'm human, I need to know how to get my own lid back on, right? So that if I am in the presence of someone who's in their downstairs brain, I can help them get their lid back on. By the way, the fancy word for that is co-regulating, right? I want to be a co-regulator, right? And I want to help someone get their lid back on. I first need to figure out how to get my lid back on.
Right. But so prison is PTSD. I mean, I would say the P in PTSD is prison.
Yeah, that sounds right.
At least for the poor correctional officers. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel for everyone in that building,
Yeah.
because it's a trigger factory,
Yes.
and we're hearing people talk about the correctional officers get feces flung on them or whatever's going on, and then suddenly they're triggered and they don't feel safe, and so nobody feels safe. And the life expectancy of a correctional officer is like 56 to 60 years old.
Yeah.
They lose they lose precious years.
They do.
And they're just doing their job. They're just going to work. And so I have compassion for every single person in that building. Because this is, and the way they've set it up, it's like war. So and a lot of PTSD is from childhood trauma, right? It's the Can you explain that?
Yeah. So again, there are studies that show that the higher a person's ACE score is, so the more that person has been exposed to childhood trauma, the more likely it is, the more vulnerable they are to develop full-blown PTSD symptoms, right? Because PTSD is a diagnosis, and in order to get the diagnosis, you have to check certain boxes, right? And there's problems with that whole system that I won't get into, but yes, the more adversity that someone has in childhood, because remember, that's a very sensitive period of development when the brain and nervous system is growing very quickly. And human bodies and brains adapt to the environment that they believe they're going to exist in, right?
Right. And what happens with that during that development? Doesn't there's less gray matter?
Yes.
There's less neurons. There's the microglia.
Yes.
There's no microglia.
Yeah, absolutely. We call myelination, right, is when there are superhighways in the brain, right? So when you learn how to tie your shoes, right, at first it's very difficult because that pathway, the tying my shoes pathway in your brain, right, is getting built, right? It's like building a highway, right? So the construction vehicles are coming in and building that road to tie your shoes, right? And then by the time you're in second grade, it's a superhighway. You don't even have to think about it. You can close your eyes and just tie your shoes in like 3 seconds, right? That's myelination, okay? So if a child grows up in an environment of scarcity, right? And there's scarce resources, like physically, there's scarce resources emotionally, right? That child will learn, I have to depend on myself, right? I have to do everything myself. So all of those networks, right, for defense and protecting self get myelinated, and it's a superhighway. And all of the networks that are for connection, right, and saying, I need support, I need help, please let me connect and attach to you, they get pruned. They get pruned. Don't need those, right? Because I'm living in an environment where I need to be wired for defense. And I sure as hell don't need to be connecting to people, because that's going to be dangerous for me.
I remember when I was 8 years old, I made that decision. I said, I got to figure this out myself.
Yep.
I actually said that to myself.
Yeah.
Wow. And
being adaptive, Fritzi. You were being adaptive. You were trying to survive.
And, I just think of all the men and women in prison on both sides.
Yeah. Yes.
On both sides. They've all made that decision. And I mean, most of our country, but my focus is prisons because I'm so concerned about what's being done in there.
Yeah.
But all those decisions, they were made that I have to take care of myself. I can't depend on my community. I can't depend on my family.
No.
And that's an interesting thing. There's a quote, it says, trauma brings up separation. Creates
Yes.
separation. So it's
Absolutely.
a sense that I am separate from the world, right?
I'm separate from everyone else because that's adaptive, right? Again, if you think about a baby or a toddler, right? And every time that toddler cries, okay, that toddler is greeted with, shut up, stop, and a slap, okay? That child learns, okay, I need to take care of myself when I cry, right?
Right.
And if I make a bid, and what is crying, right? It's a bid for comfort and connection, right? But every time I make a bid for comfort and connection, all I get is pain.
Yes.
So I'll be damned if I'm going to keep reaching out. It's just going to cause me pain. I'm going to shut that off, right? And so we have entire generations of children who are now adults, right? And they're all saying, no, I'm not going to connect. I'm not going to attach. I'm not going to see other people as humans because all that gets me is pain.
So even our empathy, the empathy superhighway is shut down, right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So there's at least 60% of Americans have at least one ACE, right? Adverse childhood experience.
Right.
So that's, and we have less gray matter. We're less able to learn, right? That's one of the things.
Yes. Yes. The learning parts of the brain are in the upstairs.
Right. And so that's shut down, right?
Yes. So that's why we have recidivism. That's why we have, right? And again, it looks like insanity. It's like, are you just not getting it? And the answer is exactly. It because they're not safe enough to learn.
Right. Safe enough to allow this part
to come online,
to exist. Yeah. Because
exactly.
we're worried about being safe.
Exactly.
And so, these special needs classes, they should just be trauma relief classes.
Right.
Right. Because then they can learn. I mean, and we think we're stupid. We shame ourselves because we can't, that math problem makes no sense.
Right.
But of course it can't make any sense because it's not coming in. This is not firing.
No. And that's what I say all the time to, I work a lot with foster children and children who've been adopted. And I try to teach and help these families heal, right? So that these children can learn to attach. And that's the hopeful part, right? Is that it doesn't matter what age you are, you can heal all of this, right? There's hope, so much hope. But that's what I tell the parents all the time, right? Because it is frustrating, right? When you have a child that just doesn't seem to be getting it. And I'll say to them, their brain just can't. Their brain can't, right? Their heart wants to so bad, but their brain just can't yet. Because for every 3 years that a person lives in trauma, for every 1 year a person lives in trauma, it takes about 3 years to heal.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, so I have kids that have been, in traumatic environments for 5 years. Let's say they were placed in safety when they were 5. It's going to take 15 years for that kid to start to heal and really start to attach and feel safe.
So what about the people living in prison and the people working in prison?
Yeah. Well, there's hope.
Yes, there's hope. But we can't wait any longer because
we're running out of time.
Well, I know. I don't know what that means though. I mean, for them,
yes,
we want them to heal, right?
Yes, absolutely, right? And statistics show that somewhere in the 90%, right? that percentage of people who enter the system will eventually come out, right? Will re-enter society. And our prisons are not rehabilitating. They're not. We call them corrections. They're not correcting anything. If anything, we're adding to the trauma and just putting these people more in defense mode.
And extending the trauma time, right? Extending that time, that 1 year, that 3 year, whatever that
1
is.
to 3. Yes. We're making it longer and longer. And then we're like, why can't they figure it out? Gee, I wonder. Right?
But that's such an important piece, is that we've been told that this is a choice. Criminality is a choice. Violence is a choice. And that's like the headline news. It's just, we don't have access.
Yeah, I don't know anybody that woke up one day and said, I think I really want to be violent and go to jail when I grow up. I don't know anybody like that.
Right. I mean, I do know, I've heard stories of that is the only hope I have. That's the only, that's the only future I see for myself.
Exactly. But it's not a free choice.
Right. And but we're basically, we're in an animalistic part of our brain, right?
Yes. We're living primitive.
We're all living in this area. So we don't have empathy for a Democrat. We don't have empathy for a Black person. We don't have empathy for someone who needs an abortion, or someone who doesn't believe in abortion. We can't see the other side because we're traumatized. We're activated offline. In here. And these are triggers for us too. Like someone who doesn't believe what we believe is a trigger, right?
Yes. Puts us right into our downstairs brains, right? We see it as threatening, right? We don't know how to put our own lids on. And it takes a lot of work, right, to learn how to put our own lids on. And this is the other piece that makes it so tricky, is that trauma, right, it activates the defense, right, systems, so that we don't want to connect or attach to other people. But the best way to heal is to be in community, right? And to heal with other humans, because trauma happens in relationship. Therefore, the healing must happen in relationship.
Exactly. I mean, that's it. I think it makes the process go faster, the healing process go faster, because what I've seen in the circles that I've led, my trauma is the same as the other guy's trauma, and another guy has the same thing, and suddenly what he's experiencing and him healing, I'm starting to feel it and I'm starting to heal. So we need circles, don't we? We need a lot of circles.
Yes, that's the corrective experience, right? We need to have experiences that surprise our brains, right? This is the key to healing, right? Trauma and getting that lid on, is that we need to have something that the brain can't categorize, right? Like, wait, here I am in prison with all these guys that I've seen in the yard for years, but we're all sitting here having real conversations and being vulnerable with each other. And I kind of like it. Right? And that's a corrective experience. And that's the surprise that we need, and repeated experiences of safety in community, right? With vulnerability, right? That is met with acceptance.
Wow.
Right? Threat. That is what's healing.
Now you take a correctional officer who is not allowed to be vulnerable, like the definition of it. But I love that you said a corrective experience. Like imagine the Department of Corrections to be about
experiences.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that be amazing?
it just makes me giggle that the word corrections is possible to actually bring about healing. Like the film Step Inside the Circle, when all those men are stepping in, usually I step in with them, but I had to be in the set, there were just too many.
Sure.
Because I was right there with them. But that circle was very healing I get a lot of reports about how healing it was to see this thing that they've held in, the secret they've had for all of their lives. Trauma loves secrets, doesn't it? Trauma.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. It loves to hide, and it just thrives in the dark.
In shame.
Yes.
Secrets and shame is trauma's best friend.
Absolutely.
And so our viewers, is there something they can do to start? I mean, we're going to cut this off because we only have an hour, but is there something they can do that you know of just to begin the healing process? Is there an exercise or something we can guide them through?
Sure. And again, I'm going to give credit to Resmaa Menakem, who wrote My Grandmother's Hands and is one of the, I think, most critical voices that we need to be listening to right now. He's a therapist, he's a somatic experiencing clinician, and he's right. It starts with me, right? So I need to start healing my body from the trauma that I have inherited and experienced personally. And that starts with understanding what my body feels like when I'm safe. And I have so many clients who just say, I don't even know. I can't even begin to tell you what that feels like. I don't know what safe feels like. But this is something that Resmaa suggests. It's called orienting. Okay. Very simple process. Okay. All you need to do, and what it does is it actually activates the psoas muscle, which is kind of in your solar plexus in your belly. And this is a muscle that starts to contract, right, when we're afraid or in defense. So we need to work on releasing some of that tension, okay? So with orienting, all we do is pick a shoulder, right? I'll pick my left. And you're just going to turn your shoulders and your hips too, and just look over your left shoulder. Just look around, right? This, and then come back to center. Okay, right? And then we're going to look up. Feel that stretch in your neck. Look around. Just take in your surroundings. And then look down. Look down at the floor. If you're outside, look down at the ground and just look around. Take in whatever you can see. Back to center. And then the other shoulder. And return your whole shoulder, both shoulders and your hips. And then back to center. And then a nice deep breath. And then just see if you can feel a settledness, right? Did you notice a shift or a difference?
Completely.
Yeah.
It really helped looking behind me too, because I feel like I know nobody's there, but my body, I guess my body now knows it.
Exactly. And this is so important for all of us to start understanding that it's within our circle of control, right? It's inside. That means we have agency over this. We can affect this. We can settle our own bodies, right? And we have to learn to settle our own bodies first, and then we can be in community with other settled bodies, right? Teach each other how to be settled together. And that's really when the healing work begins.
Wow. Wow, that's incredible. I hope everyone did that with us. And if you didn't do it with us, try it out.
Try it.
It's really, it was a full shift in my body. I had tried it before with Resmaa on a podcast, but
yes,
it's so incredible. And I thank you for that. What do we call that?
Orienting.
Orienting. So
Right?
write that down. Orienting. Remember to orient.
Yes. And I do it between every session that I have with clients because my body kind of will absorb, right, a lot of the stress that I, that because I'm walking with them, right? So between every client, I have to orient myself so that I can be fully present with my lid on for everybody. And it really does help.
Wow. I
Mm-hmm.
love that. God, I wish everyone that we're all fully present with our lids on, right?
Yes, yes.
Wow, what a great thing. What a great thing. What a
It
great
is.
thing we can do this for everybody can do. We're all got our lids on.
Mm-hmm. And we can connect.
Yes. Oh, even better. Wow. It's so crazy. Um, Emily Evans, this has been incredible. Oh, do you have any written assignments that might help? Any exercise?
Yeah. You know what? If you just go to Google and put grounding, right? Like the ground, like like grounding.
Some people in prison don't have Google.
No, that's true. They don't.
So I'm
Hmm.
going to ask the question again.
Okay.
So Emily Evans, do you have any written exercises that some of the men and women in prison can do, or the correctional officers can do, or the people listening to this podcast / YouTube can do?
So, right. So you're like things that they can write, like reflections.
Right. Some written exercise. Yeah.
Sure, sure, sure. So, something I like to do, and again, this is more orienting and it's helping to settle your body, right? Is just take a little snapshot of wherever you are at the moment with your pen and paper and list your five senses, right? So, sight, smell, taste, hear, touch, okay? And just write whatever you see next to the sight, right? If you have anything that you can hear, write it down, right? And it's helping you to stay in the present. It's helping you to get that sense of, I am inhabiting my body right here in this moment, and I'm safe.
I mean, that's my dream for everybody, is that we can inhabit our bodies and be safe.
Yes.
I mean,
See.
wow. Thank you for this gift of this conversation today.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
I hope we can have you back on maybe once a month.
I would love that.
Because I really think we've got a lot to share. You've got so much to share and so much to give. And just thank you for your wisdom and your compassion.
Thank you. Likewise, Fritzi.
Okay, we'll see you soon.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye.